Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi says stakeholders of intra-Afghan talks must remain vigilant against peace spoilers. Meeting Afghan peace chief negotiator Dr. Abdullah, Alvi said there is no military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. Abdullah lauded Pakistan for its continued support for the peace process and strengthening of bilateral ties. In India, a special court has acquitted all 32 accused, including leaders of ruling BJP, in the Babri Mosque demolition case. The court said demolition of the mosque was not pre-planned. Hindu mobs razed the centuries-old mosque in Ayodhya on the 6th of December 1992, triggering riots that killed some 2,000 people. The UN Security Council has urged Armenia and Azerbaijan to resume dialogue to end the latest round of heavy fighting over the disputed territory. UNSC President Abdul Awares read out a press statement on the conflict following an emergency session of the Council. Earlier, both Azerbaijani and Armenian leaders rejected the possibility of talks. Nearly 100 people, including civilians, have been killed and over 200 wounded since the fighting started on Sunday. India has registered 1,179 COVID-19 deaths and more than 80,000 cases in the past 24 hours. India's coronavirus fatality count has jumped to over 97,000, with infections steadily crossing 6.2 million. In Pakistan, 5 people have died from the virus overnight, taking the toll to 6,479 with over 312,000 cases. Globally, those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan's President Arif Alvi says stakeholders of intra-Afghan talks must remain vigilant against peace spoilers. Meeting Afghan peace chief negotiator Dr. Abdullah, Alvi said there is no military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. He said that the Afghan leadership must seize this historic opportunity to work together constructively. The president said that peace in Afghanistan is essential for both the countries as well as the region. Abdullah lauded Pakistan for its continued support for the peace process and strengthening of bilateral ties. Earlier, he held meetings with Prime Minister Imran Khan and Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. The US Special Envoy for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, is headed back to Doha to try and break the deadlock in the intra-Afghan negotiations. In a tweet, Khalilzad said Afghan people and the international community are watching closely and expect the negotiations to make progress. He said increased regional connectivity, trade and development will follow once peace prevails in Afghanistan. The US envoy said the intra-Afghan talks are to finalize a roadmap for Afghanistan's political future and a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Taliban say the dialogue hit a snag after Kabul refused to acknowledge the Doha Pact as the base document of the intra-Afghan talks. In India, a special court has acquitted all 32 accused, including leaders of the ruling BJP, in the Babri Mosque demolition case. The court said demolition of the mosque was not pre-planned. The accused on the trial included former Deputy Prime Minister L.K. Advani, former Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Kalyan Singh, and other BJP leaders. The court said there is no conclusive proof against the accused. It said the court could not determine the authenticity of the audio and video submitted by the investigation agency CBI. Meanwhile, the All India Muslim Personal Law Board says it will appeal the verdict in the High Court. Hindu mobs razed the centuries-old mosque in Ayodhya on 6th of December 1992, triggering riots that killed some 2,000 people. Pakistan has strongly condemned a shameful acquittal of those responsible for demolishing the historic mosque. In a statement, a Foreign Office said the ruling is yet another manifestation of the pliant judiciary under the extremist BJP RSS regime. The Human Rights Watch says 15 rights organizations have condemned the Indian government's actions against Amnesty International. In a statement, the watchdog said the international organizations have pledged to continue their support for human rights defenders in India. It said New Delhi's actions are part of its repressive tactics to shut down the critical voices protecting human rights. It said the BJP government has increasingly cracked down on civil society. The watchdog said the Indian government harasses and brings politically motivated cases against human rights defenders. Earlier, Amnesty International announced halting work in the country after the Indian government froze its bank accounts in an act of reprisal. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has urged the United Nations General Assembly to declare an international day to combat Islamophobia. Speaking virtually at a meeting of the UN Alliance of Civilizations, Qureshi called for criminalizing willful incitement to hate and violence. Qureshi said Islamophobia is unmistakable in the manifestos of far-right and neo-fascist parties. He said the magnitude of the problems continues to grow, partly by a rise in populism and partly through unregulated social media platforms. He said freedom of expression does not grant the freedom to insult or hurt others. The UN Security Council has urged Armenia and Azerbaijan to resume dialogue to end the latest round of heavy fighting over the disputed territory. UNSC President Abdu Abare read out a press statement on the conflict following an emergency session of the Council.
Abare said the Council supports the role of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe and urges both sides to work closely with them. Earlier, in an interview, Azeri President Ilham Aliyev flatly ruled out any possibility of talks, while Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said negotiations cannot take place amid continued fighting. Armenia said fighter jets belonging to Azerbaijan's close ally Turkey had shot down one of its Su-25 warplanes, killing the pilot. Turkey and Azerbaijan have refuted the claim, calling it absolutely untrue. Nearly 100 people, including civilians, have been killed and over 200 wounded since fighting started on Sunday.
British lawmakers have adopted a contentious bill giving ministers the power to breach the Brexit deal with the European Union. The House of Commons passed the Internal Market Bill by 340 votes to 256. The bill is designed to enable goods and services to flow freely across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The legislation will now go to the House of Lords. The EU says the bill can lead to the re-imposition of a hard Irish land border, which will violate the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. The bloc says the treaty is meant to guarantee a say over future trade between Northern Ireland and EU member Ireland. A spokesperson for the European Union says the bloc will take Britain to court if the offending clauses are not revoked. US President Donald Trump and his challenger Joe Biden have fiercely clashed in one of the most chaotic and rancorous White House debates in years. During the debate in Ohio, Donald Trump declined to condemn white supremacists and violent right-wing groups, while Biden called Trump a clown and accused him of stoking a racist hatred. What about this first of the three debates in this report?
The long-awaited battle between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is marked by rancor. They clashed over COVID, crime, healthcare, and even their families. Moderator Chris Wallace never established control of the debate, with Trump repeatedly ignoring his calls to let Biden speak. The president bulldozed his way through the 90-minute debate, trying to goad Biden, claiming that Democrats are trying to steal the November presidential election, declining to condemn white supremacist groups when asked to do so.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it.
The former vice president called Trump a racist as they clashed over Black Lives Matter protest.
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know.
In a fiery exchange over healthcare, Biden called Trump totally irresponsible on managing COVID-19 and said the president is only worried about masks in the interest of protecting his own health, not others.
The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
You pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy, the wrong night at
Joe.
the wrong time.
Listen.
The two men frequently talked over each other, with Trump interrupting, nearly shouting so often that Biden eventually snapped at him.
Vote now.
gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're
to
a
answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
wouldn't you answer that
because
question?
the question
You want to put a
is
lot of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is
justice,
the
radical
question,
left.
Will you
Who
shut
is
up,
your,
man?
listen,
Opinion polls suggest Biden has a steady single-digit lead over Trump, but with 35 days until Election Day. Surveys from several important states show a closer contest. Polls also suggest 1 in 10 Americans have yet to make up their mind who to vote for.
Russia says its forces have killed more than 133,000 terrorists in Syria over the past 5 years. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu wrote a special article at the 5th anniversary of the Moscow's military operation in Syria. Shoigu said anti-terrorism operations in Syria have demonstrated the increased capabilities of Russia's armed forces. He said the militants eliminated in Syria include 865 gang leaders, as well as 4,500 personnel from former Soviet republics. Shoigu said 98% of Russia's military police personnel and 90% of its pilots have gained real combat experience in Syria. Russian aerospace forces began operation in Syria in September 2015 after Moscow's agreement with Damascus. The Palestine Liberation Organization has called on the Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghaid to immediately resign. PLO Executive Committee's Secretary General Saib Erekat says Ghaid's praise for Arab-Israel normalization deals has compromised his credibility. Talking to media, Erekat said he met with the ambassadors of Jordan, Egypt, Morocco and Tunisia. Erekat said the pacts by the US, UAE and Bahrain violate the agreements and resolutions of the Arab League and the Arab Peace Initiative. He said Ghaid tried to legalize the normalization agreements, saying they paved the way for more such pacts. Hezbollah has invited media to visit the sites which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed are the group's missile depots. Earlier, speaking at the UN General Assembly, Netanyahu accused Hezbollah of having missile factory in Beirut. Hezbollah's chief Hassan Nasrallah rejected Netanyahu's remarks and said they aim to provoke Lebanese people against the group. The alleged missile depot turned out to be a gas canister factory after media visited the site. Nasrallah said if Hezbollah had possessed even a single missile, the group would have made it public. He said Hezbollah doesn't store rockets irresponsibly near Beirut port or any gas station. He said Hezbollah knows how to handle their weapons. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi has confirmed the US and EU have threatened to shut their embassies. In a cabinet meeting, al-Kadhimi said continuous rocket attacks have forced a number of organizations and diplomatic missions to think about closing embassies. The Prime Minister ordered an immediate investigation into a missile attack on Baghdad airport, which claimed the lives of 5 citizens. He said the possible embassy's closure can terminate military, cultural and economic cooperation with Baghdad. He said this situation is dangerous in the face of the challenges Baghdad is experiencing at the moment. Iraq's Green Zone is often the target of terrorist attacks as it houses government institutions, embassies, and Baghdad International Airport. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In India, widespread protests have broken out after police cremated a Dalit gang rape victim. Brother of the victim said the police forced them to cremate the body without autopsy and medical legal procedures. Police and district administration deny the charges and said the victim was cremated after the consent of her family members. A 19-year-old Dalit woman died after she was gang raped by 4 upper caste men, sparking outrage in the country. The protesters blocked the roads for hours, chanting, "Hang the rapists." The incident took place on the 14th of September in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Police told local media that the victim was raped by 4 men in a field in Hathras district. India has registered 1,179 COVID-19 deaths and more than 80,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, coronavirus has claimed over 1 million lives and infected more than 33.5 million people so far.
India remains the second worst hit after the US. The country's coronavirus fatality count has jumped to over 97,000, with infections tally crossing 6.2 million. In China, the National Health Commission has reported 90 new cases, up from 12 a day earlier. Australia's coronavirus hotspot of Victoria State maintained its steady downward trend in new infections. Victoria recorded 13 new cases, sharply down from a peak of more than 700 cases lodged in early August. In the Americas, New York mayor said the city will fine residents or visitors up to $1,000 fine if they refuse to wear a mask in public. The rate of positive COVID-19 tests has risen above 3% in New York City for the first time in months. Over in Brazil, authorities have reported just above 32,000 cases and 863 deaths in the last 24 hours, taking the fatality toll to nearly 143,000. While Mexico's death rate continues to be high, the country reported 4,446 new cases and 560 deaths overnight.
In Pakistan, 5 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,479. The Health Ministry says 747 more tested positive overnight. The ministry said the number of active cases stands at 8,903. It said out of over 312,000 detected cases, nearly 297,000 have recovered so far. It said more than 136,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 99,000 in Punjab so far. Russia says the United States is putting forward unacceptable preconditions on extending the New START treaty. In an interview, Russia's U.S. Ambassador Anatoly Antonov said the conditions do not take into account Kremlin's concerns. Antonov said Washington's inaction created the time pressure in extending the New START despite Russia's proposals. He said there is a possibility the U.S. will increase the number of nuclear warheads if the treaty is not extended. North Korea says it has a reliable and effective war deterrent for self-defense. In his address to the UN General Assembly, Pyongyang's envoy Kim Song said peace can only be safeguarded when one possesses absolute strength to prevent war. Kim said peace and security of the Korean Peninsula and the region are now firmly defended. He said the country is now focusing on developing its economy. The envoy said it is a matter of fact that North Korea badly needs a favorable external environment for economic construction. But he said Pyongyang cannot sell off its dignity just in hope for brilliant transformation. Kuwait's Crown Prince Nawaf Al Ahmad Al Jaber Al Sabah becomes the kingdom's new Emir. Kuwaiti cabinet named Prince Nawaf Al Sabah as the new Emir as per the constitution of the country. Prince Nawaf is succeeding his brother who passed away yesterday while receiving treatment in the US. The Crown Prince has assured assumed power after taking the oath in the parliament. Previously, Sheikh Nawaf has served as Defense Minister, Interior Minister and Deputy Prime Minister of Kuwait over the years. The 75th debate at the United Nations General Assembly has ended in New York. UNGA President Volkan Bozkır says the debate closed in strong support for multilateralism. Delivering closing remarks, Bozkır said Kurtius laid down a complete agenda which supports the priorities of the UN. Bozkır said many political leaders recognize the importance of a unified approach as the most effective system to address global challenges. He said issues like COVID-19 pandemic and climate change can only be solved through cooperation among the nations. Bozkır said he was pleased to hear so many member states recognize the opportunity to collaborate better for future crises. In Afghanistan, a young girl is bracing the odds and wants to bring honor to the country by climbing world's highest peak, Mount Everest. The fearless girl has already mounted 7,492 meters altitude Noshak Peak. More about the courageous girl in this report.
Fatima Sultani is a young mountaineer and member of Afghanistan's Hike Ventures team. She has also been a member of the national jiu-jitsu team for almost 7 years. Fatma has aimed to summit the peak of Afghanistan's Mir Samim mountain and the world's highest peak, Mount Everest. The girl has continued to climb throughout the pandemic.
My main goal is to show the world that Afghan women are strong and can do the most challenging work that men do. When I became aware that women from foreign countries come here to conquer the high peaks of Afghanistan, I thought, why can't we, the Afghan women, conquer these peaks that are located in our own country? With this motivation, I joined the Hike Ventures team to achieve my goals of conquering high mountain peaks.
Fatima Sultani is the first woman in Afghanistan who has conquered many mountains. Her trainer says he is contented with her performance. The father says he will continue to celebrate Fatma's achievements.
I have not imposed any restrictions on Fatma doing sports. I told Fatma that you are free to do whatever sport you want to, even mountaineering, and I will support her as much as I can. Honestly, many people often impose restrictions on women's sports, which is not acceptable.
Fatma Sultani's father has concerns about her safety, for there is a serious lack of mountain equipment.
Most European stocks have edged lower as investors are skeptical over the fresh restriction due to the resurgence of COVID-19 in Western Europe. The pan-European stock 600 has edged lower, with travel and leisure sector dropping close to 1.5%. London's FTSE is the only stock trading marginally over the flat line. Italy's FTSE MIB has slipped fractionally. Frankfurt's DAX and Paris's CAC 40 lost close to 0.5%. Earlier Asian markets traded mixed. Chinese, Japanese and Australian shares shed, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng and Seoul's Kospi gained marginally. Nokia has signed a deal with Britain's biggest telecoms group, BT, to replace Chinese Huawei as the UK's largest equipment provider for 5G networks. In a statement, BT's CEO said it is critical to make the right technology choices in a fast-moving and competitive market. Nokia's CEO said the two firms have collaborated for over a quarter of a century to deliver best-in-class connectivity to people. Under the deal, Nokia will supply base stations and other network equipment to allow its customers access to the internet. In July, the UK government announced all mobile providers will be banned from buying Huawei's 5G equipment after the 31st of December. It said all cellular companies in the UK must also remove all 5G kits of the Chinese firm from their networks by 2027. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.